Here we are from Palm Springs, California, 7 minutes past the hour. With a slight delay, we are here Sunday, February 12th of the year of the Lord 2023. Everybody, of course, is watching something else, possibly watching the Super Bowl, but this is the Super Bowl of another kind. It's the Super Bowl of our fight against evil. It's a show that we are dedicating today to a subject of great importance because we are talking about exorcism. So welcome everybody. I'm Leo Zagami, she's Christy Zagami, and this is the Leo Zagami Show.
Hi everyone.
Christy, the list. Yes. The list of the sponsors, because we have a list today. At least a few people who have, of course, worked to help us out for today's show. And we want to thank Bruce Codish, Lisa DeWord, and you have written this name in a way I can't spell. I'm sorry. It's a Japanese name. And what's this? How you spell it?
Rihai Ishikawa.
Oh, well, thanks God we have Christy, who has been living in Japan for a few years. So
That's probably said it wrong.
What do you mean? You said it wrong. I hope you said it right.
Ruhei.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the donations, guys. Thank you, Lisa, Bruce, and Ruhei.
Yes, thank you, because you made this show possible, and thank you, Pina.
And Pina, too.
And
thank you,
Pina,
Pina.
of course.
And everybody that bought the book.
And everybody who bought our books, because we have a number of books aside from Volume 8, which is the book of the moment. We have Volume 7, Volume 6.66, which is basically the book that inspires most of the content of today's show. And then we have also Christie's books and a number of other books. You can find them all linked here in the video of today, or actually you can find the links at leozagami.com.
Everybody's watching the Super Bowl.
Who cares about?
You're busted.
So basically what happened is the Grammy Awards, one of the main protagonists was, of course, Beyonce, the queen of the Illuminati, as I call her in Volume 8 of my Confessions, but the princess of the Illuminati, before, of course, any other... in the music business, at least, is Rihanna. Well, we consider the princess of the Illuminati, Christy. Christy, you are the princess of the Illuminati. You made the Confessions also, Confessions of an Illuminati princess, but Rihanna stole your name, and she is.
I think I had it first,
okay.
But I didn't copyright it.
You didn't copyright it, so that's it. Rihanna stole it. I must say that both Beyonce and Rihanna put on a few kilos. Okay, guys, let's get serious, because of course we have a great show, and in fact the most suitable opening for a show like this, of course, a remake of Tubular Bells, maybe that is basically the most suitable sound, because of course it brings us to a film that it's probably the most known film of all time on the subject of exorcism, which is, of course, The Exorcist, no, Christy? Because we have a lot to say about exorcism today, but of course we want to give the possibility to all of you to spread the news about this important show today. I tell you, it's an important show. So please go on your social networks, spread the word, share this link, this video, the link of this video. Well. And here we go with a great show. A great show, yes, a great show. No. With a mandolin. So, you know, it's just about copyright laws, guys. We kind of offered you a different version of. Okay, so let's get serious. First of all, we want to thank all our Japanese friends that are here in the chat. We have a few of them. Christy.
I just love my Japanese friends.
That's cool. That's cool. And of course, we would love to go back to Japan. Me and Christy were there the last time in 2009 when we signed.
My favorite place in the whole world.
We signed a great publishing deal. We published. I published 6 books in Japan.
See, people don't know that.
Yeah, people don't know
all
that.
those books in Japan too.
Yeah, my books were first published in Japan, then in the rest of the world. Just so you know. Okay, so. The subject of today. It's a very, very disturbing subject. Send your children to bed because you're going to see some pretty weird stuff today. And of course, I think that we should open the show with the words of a priest, a former Jesuit who actually was always a priest all his life. Even if he gave up on the Jesuit order, he stayed an exorcist until his last exorcism that probably cost him his life. There was actually here. Why? Weird.
Is the video there?
No, because we can't seem to access it. Like
He had to exercise the computer.
Guys, I had to exercise the computer. I mean, I'm not joking, guys. I'm not joking, and I'm actually here with this is a piece of the bandages of the stigmata man himself, the exorcist with the stigmata Padre Pio. And of course, this is also with the official authorization that was given to me by the head of the friars to use this relic for exorcism purposes. We started the show and already something is happening. So this is not normal, but we're going to carry on because, of course, we opened up talking about Father Malachi Martin. Father Malachi Martin died in 1999, a few months after the Vatican revised the ancient Roman ritual for the exorcism. And of course, we will talk also about that in today's show, as well as many topics that are touched in volume 6.66. We will talk about exorcism in various traditions. We will, of course, start with the Catholic one. We will talk about the Jewish tradition, and we talk also about the Islamic tradition. Of course, there's also exorcism being performed in other religious denominations, but we will focus mainly on the Abrahamic ones. This is the face of Father Malachi Martin. He used to be a Jesuit. He participated as secretary of Cardinal Bea, a Jesuit, to the Second Vatican Council, and after the Second Vatican Council, he actually left the Jesuit order and came here to the United States, where over a period of 30 years performed thousands of exorcisms under the authority of the Catholic Church. Even if officially he didn't regard himself as an active Jesuit, he was still a man of the church. And of course, in the Netflix documentary Hostage to the Devil, there is also a testimony of a CIA agent who participated with him in his last exorcism that probably cost him his life. So what better thing to actually introduce the subject of exorcism with the words, the description of Father Malachi Martin himself, no? So thank you very much for tuning in today. It's not going to be an easy transmission. We are really going to go deep with the D-book of the Jewish tradition, the gene of the Islamic, the demons of the Catholic faith. We're going to show you a lot of things that, of course, might also disturb some people. But this is the reality of demonic possession. I'm going to talk about my own exorcism. I was the subject of a Catholic, a Coptic Christian, and an Islamic exorcism myself. So, and I also participated in delivering people from demons in actual exorcism. So I would like to really go into all this, but I think that the description that Father Malachi Martin does is probably the most in-depth one. Christy, you also have you had a demonic possession and you had an exorcism. I know that you don't want to talk about it today, but briefly, let's... What, sorry?
I can't see.
No, but just a second. What is your experience about these things? You are also, I think, a believer that these things are serious and they should be considered as such. Isn't that the case?
It's real. I had my exorcism last year, and after I had it done, I felt a lot better. And I wouldn't say I was possessed, because I think it was just clearing the air, like
at times exorcism are described in that way, as some kind of cleansing purpose.
More of a cleansing.
But we will also discuss that, because there is a specific tradition that is practiced in Northern Africa called the Zar, which does this cleansing, especially for women, in the form of music. But let's go to Father Malachi Martin, and welcome everybody to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Chrissy Zagami. Today, exploring the Illuminati, Occult Part 6, The Exorcism. Here we are.
For 30 years, as a Catholic priest, Dr. Martin did exorcisms. So from New York City, staying up late, here is Dr. Malachi Martin. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning there, Art. How are you?
Oh, I am very well, and I am so honored to have you here.
No, I'm really privileged to be talking on this vast network. It is really universal.
It really is universal now. It's amazing.
I heard you describe it from north to south to east to west.
Oh, yes. Covers a lot of territory. I'm not, my background, doctor, is not Catholicism. I'm not Catholic. My wife is. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to stumble and bumble, and I hope you'll bear with me.
I doubt if you could stumble and bumble in anything. But anyway, we'll take that as a simple statement.
And take this also as a simple statement. Many years ago now, you can tell me how many,
yes.
The movie The Exorcist came out.
Yes.
It was the first of its kind, really, major movies, and it scared the hell out of me. Be honest with you. And as no movie, even with all their horrible little monsters, ever has since. And I'm not sure why.
Funny? Isn't that funny? Isn't that interesting? I find that very curious. I really do. Even more than any of the Dracula and the Frankenstein films.
Even more than the movies with Alien, where monsters are popping out of people's bellies and all sorts of horrible things.
Yes.
And I think the reason is because I viewed The Exorcist as real.
Yes, I think so. It did touch on a chord, the existence of a demon, which could, on occasion, inhabit the body of some human being. I think that might be the element. It was set also, that particular picture was set in Washington, real lifetime Washington, and you had real live-looking characters undergoing these horrible contortions and distortions. So I suppose it did. The fact is, Art, that at the back of our consciousness, at least in, I was going to say in the West, but then I know it's the same in India, it's the same in China, it's the same in Japan, and in Latin America. At the back of our consciousness, there's always a fear of the evil one.
Yes. Well, there may be a reason for that. The evil one. Now, let me start there by asking you, is there a difference between possession by the devil and possession by a demon?
Yes, there is. You see, the mythology or the legend or the doctrine or the teaching, whichever you want to regard it as, it holds that there is a major evil spirit called Lucifer. And there is another one called Satan. And they are accompanied by, or they are among many, many smaller demons. And these do attack and possess human beings.
So this, of course, Father Malachi Martin. Today, everybody is watching the Super Bowl. I would like to remember volume 6.66 pointed out on a great truth. The satanic pop star Rihanna. Recently, actually, somebody who went to hell said he was listening to Rihanna's music. No, it's not a laughing matter, though. I know it might seem like a laughing matter, but it is not a laughing
umbrella too.
Yeah. So basically, they were listening to something demonic, of course, in hell. But this was the introduction of a Catholic priest to the subject of exorcism. Father Malachi Martin, of course, performed a lot of exorcism. Maybe in the end, it even cost him his own life, because this girl that he exorcised in the end might have really been too much for him. This is another exorcism who died in 2016 instead. Malachi Martin died in 1999, who picked up from the work of Malachi Martin. And actually, I must say that Father Gabriele Amort was one of the most known exorcists and also somebody who wanted to use the traditional Roman rite. Now, the traditional Roman rite, I have here this is a book by Corrado Balducci, who all of you know because of UFOs, his relationship with Zachariah Sitchin, but he was also an exorcist before he became a ufologist. This is something I always said, and I pointed out also in my famous interview with Project Camelot. Now, this is the original. These are images that are very rare because this is one of the first copy of the Rituale Romanum that was left untouched until 1999, and like I explained in volume 6.66, it was revised to actually help out the devil. And Amort knew that. He understood that. He said no exorcist was really called and interviewed by the Vatican on how they should revise this ritual. And in the end, they gave us a weapon that wasn't suitable for such an enemy. It was like, basically we had a machine gun. I'm giving this kind of allegory, but basically that was what Father Amort said, and then we were left with a knife. So, I mean, it's, of course, Father Amort, another figure which I would like to introduce to you in this brief interview which he did with CNN a few years ago. Father Amort, of course, is no longer with us, but his organization of exorcists was finally recognized by the Vatican in 2014 and yearly meets up in Rome doing courses which are now open not only to the clergy but also to the laymen, to the people who are, of course, not strictly in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, so also women. They started to open up, but I don't know if Amort will have approved because he was very much a traditionalist. But let's hear what he says about Satan in the Vatican and demonic possession.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I'd like to begin with something that you've said in your book, and that is that the devil is lodging in the Vatican. With all of the allegations we've seen recently of sexual abuse involving priests, do you believe that is the devil's work?
Beh, sì, intendiamoci, il demonio tenta tutti.
Well, yes, the devil tempts everyone. He tempts everyone in every environment. In particular, he tempts those on top, in politics, in economics, in sport. And naturally, he tempts above all the religious leaders. So you shouldn't be surprised if the devil tempts those in the Vatican. That's his job.
Che il demonio tenti anche nel Vaticano.
Have you ever performed an exorcism on a priest accused of molesting a child?
No, non mi è mai capitato. Ora, i pedofili non sono indemoniati.
No, it's never happened. Now, pedophiles are not possessed by the devil. They are tempted by the devil. They don't need exorcism. They need to be converted to God. That's what they need. They need to confess. They need true penance, true repentance. That's what they need. They're not possessed.
Now, you've said we shouldn't be surprised that the devil is present in the Vatican because the devil is present in all the spheres of life. With all of the scandals we've seen recently, do you think the devil's presence is stronger today?
No, nessuna sorpresa. Il mondo è sempre andato così.
I'm not surprised. The world has always been like that. The devil attacks everyone. He also attacks people who are in the Vatican.
Se noi leggiamo la storia, se conosciamo la storia.
If we look at history, if we know our history, we see how many of those in the hierarchy have been attacked by the devil. It's always been that way. The devil is just doing his job.
Now, some people in the church, when they talk about the devil, when they talk about Satan, they use it as a metaphor for the weakness of human beings. But you're talking about something very real, aren't you?
Certo, realissima. Dico, se credete al Vangelo, credete all'esistenza del demonio.
Absolutely, very real. I'm saying that if you believe in the gospel, you believe in the existence of the devil. The devil's power to possess people, the power that he has to take possession of people.
Di liberare dal demonio. Basta credere nel Vangelo.
Well, Jesus was himself an exorcist. In the Gospels, we have at least 7 descriptions of him exorcising. And of course, I can cite many of these elements to support also the fact that Jesus really used exorcism as an example of his war against Satan. Things were no longer the same once Jesus came along, and people could use his name as an intermediary to fight these forces. Now, up until the 5th century after Christ, the ritual of exorcism wasn't really formalized. So everybody was simply interceding by being a Christian. That was enough to intercede and be able to. Then, of course, the charismatic power kind of like faded out, and the church felt the need to codify these teachings against Satan and his legion. Let's go now in one of these exorcists performed by Father Malachi Martin, that was actually featured also in another movie, also on Netflix. And this exorcism is particularly disturbing. It's one of the last exorcisms that he performed before he died, of course, in Rome. I warn you, it's particularly disturbing, so it's not for the faint-hearted. Here we go.
Rispondemi. No! Venis tu cante tempus torquere Ite te perpetus la misurgia, infine tempor vitus et simis, discia diciam maledicti, in ignem eternum, fiberatus es diabole tangeris eis, tibia nimis angelis suis, lerme serum quinum comorientus, tibias angelis tui, inestinguibile, regalabul incendio,
So, first of all, we have to distinguish between mental illness and possession. If, for example, I bring a priest to a mental asylum, I will notice that most of the people present will probably like the fact that the priest is talking to them. They will become engaged with him, and this is a sign that they're not possessed. The possessed person will not like the priest, neither what he's saying, neither the prayers that, of course, come out of his mouth. So that gives you already a differentiation. But in my book, I, of course, not only published the whole Roman ritual of the exorcism in the English language, though it should be performed in Latin. That is another thing. We have noticed this constant war on Latin. Now, recently, even the FBI came out with a memo regarding traditional Catholics who perform the Latin Mass. The Latin language is particularly strong and is particularly powerful against these demons. That's why Pope Francis himself is persecuting within the various dioceses the people who are the priests who are still performing the Latin Mass. Let's remember the Second Vatican Council ended up in December 1965, and that was the moment in which all sorts of reforms went into place. But the last reform was actually the revision of the rite of exorcism, which went from 23 prayers, 23, very important number, to 3 prayers, it went from basically a number of changes that obviously from 23 signs of the cross to 3 signs of the cross, from a number of prayers and a number of words to a less number of words, because they castrated this ritual. Okay, so let me now at this point continue with the words of Malachi Martin, before we, of course, also will present you exorcism also in other traditions, because I would like also to show you an exorcism in the Jewish tradition.
In their will and their intellect, that's the general sort of picture you get from books and studies and doctrine and teaching about the devil and about evil. And I think, what I was saying was that I think at the edge of our consciousness there's always the fear that perhaps indeed there is such a thing. We don't believe it. We Catholics do hold it, and Christians in general do hold it, but there's a consciousness, there's some evil spirit at work. It could be in our world, and we're afraid of it. And that it can, according to the belief in many parts of the world and in many parts of history of man, there is the possibility of being possessed, of one's body being dominated by such an evil spirit.
So, like Malachi Martin says, in many parts of the world, different tradition, the possession of spirits is something that is present, and of course is present also in the Jewish tradition. Now, here in America, they don't really perform exorcism. Even the rabbis of the Shabbat, the most conservative ones, tend to ignore the possibility of practicing an exorcism, because they have moved from it, and they have an attitude at times. Of course, they are not like the Reformed synagogues. Those are completely in the hands of Satan, because we know the Reformed synagogues are basically in the hands of the Sabbatean Frankists and the labor Zionists. Those Reformed synagogues are no longer in contact with the work of God, so that we can forget. But the exorcism that I'm about to show you is, of course, from Israel, is directly from a more traditional approach, because otherwise we have, of course, this kind of approach, which I would like to show you. I mean, the approach here is based on the fact that the persons that had these problems, the rabbi said basically they were not consuming kosher food, they were not, but I also would like to tell you that there is in the Middle East still traditional exorcist practices. I went through a practice that is also done in the Jewish tradition, which I will talk about in a moment. I went through it in Egypt. But first of all, I would like to share with you the words of this rabbi. This rabbi, of course, that in a very charismatic and funny way talks about this exorcism story. Here we go.
I'll tell you this very strange story. I got a phone call once in Minnesota, and the person online had a very heavy Indian accent from India. And he says, "Hello, are you a Makubal?" I thought it was a prank joke. I said, "Yes." He says, "Do you do exorcism? Do you chase dibuks out of people?" I said, "Yeah, all the time." He said, "You think you can help my wife?" I said, "Sure." I'm waiting for, like, what's the joke here? The guy says, "Okay, we'll be there in 40 minutes, and he hangs up. I said, "Whoa, what happened here?" I thought it was my brother. So I called my brother. I said, "What was the punchline to that joke?" He says, "What joke?" Wasn't him. 40 minutes later, a car pulls up. There's a guy in the car with his wife. He is Indian from Israel. She is Israeli. And she has a serious problem. There's a dibuk in her. Making a long story short. He, coming from India, believes in all this, healers, and she has this thing in her that's making her crazy, dangerous. So they went to all the healers that they could find in Eretz Yisrael, and they went to Mekubolim, and the Mekubolim gave them kameyas, all sorts of stuff, and it's just getting worse. So they decided to come to America to see if they can find in America some kind of a healer. They came to Minnesota, and they went to a healer, and the healer went into a whole trance and said, "Get out. Go away. This thing is too strong for me. It's going to get me crazy also." So they really panicked, and they decided that they must find a Mekubal to help. So they called the Reform Temple. They didn't know it. It was listed under synagogues. So they called the Reform Temple, and they said, "We're looking for a Mekubal." They said, "Call Chabad." So he calls the Chabad house, and that's what the phone call was. And it's serious. I said, "Oh, listen, I'm not a Mekubal, and I didn't know that this was serious. But if you really want help, give me your name and your mother's name. I'll call the Rebbe, 770, and we'll get a bracha from the Rebbe. But you have to promise you'll do whatever the Rebbe tells you." They promised. I got an answer within an hour. The Rebbe's answer was, "Diyuk bekashrus ho'achila v'shtia." Be really careful that what you eat and drink are kosher.
So, we will, of course, play more of this interesting explanation by a rabbi who, of course, works with the Chabad. And we have maximum respect for Orthodox Jews in this country, but still, they don't seem to want to practice any form of exorcism, which is contrary to what they were doing when they were in Israel, when basically fighting these forces. Because first of all, we have to explain for non-Jews something that is a little bit complex in the whole demonology, which is it has a different kind of approach. Okay, first of all, the debuk. What are the debuk? The debuk are basically, in Jewish mythology, a malicious possessing spirit believed to be a dislocated soul of a dead person that basically goes and possesses you. And they leave the body only if they are exorcised most of the time. Other times, like this rabbi is suggesting, if you eat certain food, of course, food is important, guys. We said it also in the episode regarding alchemy. You are what you eat. And so if you eat things that are not proper, you could actually become possessed. If you go to McDonald's, you might become possessed. I know that it might...
That's crazy.
I know, but that's how it is. So, I'm not saying that,
if you
this
eat
happens
food
all the
from a
time.
witch, will you be possessed?
Well,
What if some evil person made your food at the restaurant and then you ate it?
Depends what you're eating.
Oh.
But the debuk is a concept that until the 1920s, it wasn't really known in Western culture. When I said before about an exorcism which I myself was subject to in Egypt by a Coptic Christian lady, and the Copts are very close really to the old Jewish tradition in what they do. Well, this practice is called molybdomancy, and molybdomancy is a technique of divination in most cultures in the Middle East, Northern Africa, but it's also in Jewish folk medicine, in Yiddish folk medicine. The segula obleigish is basically involves a medicine woman reciting a psalm or an incantation and then throwing lead into a vessel full of water over your head. And this is what Madame Fula did to me in Cairo. So I know exactly what kind of exorcism can be performed also at a Jewish level. But let me show you a traditional Jewish rabbi in Israel performing an exorcism. No wishy-washy stuff. I know that the Chabad are supposed to be the most conservative forces of Judaism in this country, but unfortunately, they still don't take exorcism too seriously. So let's go and see a serious Jewish exorcism. Yeshiva World. So basically here we are in front of a different situation in which the debunk is exorcised from this guy who is ends up being on the floor here, but he will be liberated.
תודה רבה לקדוש ברוך הוא.
תודה רבה לך, השם יתברך, תודה רבה לך, השם יתברך, תודה רבה לך, השם.
I like also this element of joyous element, something we see in some of the religious exorcist practices in the Middle East and in Northern Africa, especially after I will show you in the Tsar tradition. But let's see what happened to this young person who is being exorcised here, and exorcised following, of course, a Jewish ritual of exorcism, an exorcism of a debunk, which is this entity we talked about.
עכשיו זה התקופות האחרונות, זהו, גמרנו, זה דברים. ברוך השם, תהיה איתנו בקשר, השם גדול, השם יותר, עוד מעט הכל יהיה בסדר, בעזרת השם. נודה לשם.
יש פה מים, יש מים.
In the meantime, I want to welcome everybody, Christy, to our show today. It's a quite particular show. Leo and Christy Zagami, The Exorcism, exploring the Illuminati Occult Part 6. We started with this show. We had to actually exorcise the computer because even the computer got possessed. This is a Jewish exorcism, rare images of a Jewish exorcism of a D-book. The D-book, like I said, is a specific kind of a demon in Jewish tradition. We have also the possession by the Ibur. Ibur is actually a positive possession. We will talk about that too. And then we have the Shedim, which are spirits of demons in the Tanakh in Jewish mythology, even if very rare. But let's continue with this liberation phase.
כבוד הרב, בעלי הצדיק, אתה יכול בבקשה להסביר לקהל הצופים שצופים לך בפייסבוק מה זה, כי הם לא יודעים מה זה?
חלק יגידו כן, בוא אני אסביר כמה עניינים. יש כמה. כתוב, אי אפשר, זה לא...
Now, for those who want to know a little bit more about, of course, exorcism in the Jewish tradition, exorcism is a ritual of power performed in order to drive an evil spirit, of course, in many different traditions. And the Christian scholar Origen credited Jews with a special talent for exorcising demons. And this is, of course, one of those rare moments we have to actually see this kind of power. The first allusion to exorcism appears in the Bible, in the youth narratives of David, First Samuel. But while the biblical David seemed to be able to effect the temporary expulsion of Saul's evil spirits using music, because music, remember guys, is a very powerful tool. We will see it also used by Muslims with the Zar tradition, which is another very interesting ritual which will be viewed by you soon, which will be screening here in this special dedicated to the subject of exorcism. And we have, of course, Giuseppe Flavio, we call him in Italian, Josephus Flavius, who recounts he was himself a Jewish Roman who became also a very important historian, because one of the few testimonies also of Jesus outside of the Gospels are actually of Joseph Flavius. And he recounts incidents of possession and exorcism in his Antiquities of the Jews. In his description, exorcism involved burning herbs and immersing the possessed person in water. The New Testament also reports Jesus to have performed numerous exorcisms of demonic spirits in the first century, and of course Palestine. And the Dead Sea Scroll includes several exorcism, incantation, and formula. The Dead Sea Scrolls has 4 songs for the charming of demons with music. We are continuing also to see how this guy is being liberated, and the liberation is actually happening here.
על כיסא, ברגע שהצדיק הוציא לו את הרוח הרעה, הרוח התחילה להשתולל, הוא נפל על הרצפה, הכל בסדר, יש לו כמה... לא, אבל למי שדואג, רבנו, שלא ידאגו, למי שדואג, כבוד הרב.
Now you will notice in all exorcism there is always like a physical element. The person who is exorcising is always touching the person who is being exorcised. Now this happens in most of the exorcism, apart from the one which of course I've described earlier, the one I was subject to in Egypt, which sees instead this different kind of thing happening with the lead being poured on top of your, not on top of your head, but soon I'm going to show you what happens. In the meantime, we are seeing how this young individual finally is being liberated. This exorcism actually was successful. It happened in Israel, and of course we are glad of the success that is then showed. You see here. Let's see more of it.
4 שנים הוא סבל מזה, הוא היה אצל כמה רבנים, הוא היה אצל רבנים צדיקים, אבל לא הצליחו להוציא לו, ברוך השם הצדיק הוציא.
The father, you see, is very, very emotional here. This is the father. What?
בני, זה הבן שלך, הוא אף פעם לא בכה? ברוך השם. הוא גם לא יכל לאכול תקופה ארוכה ולא לשתות. וגם צרכים, היה קשה לו הכל, זה פשוט אכל אותו מבפנים. הנה, ברוך השם. תודה לשם, תודה לשם. אני מרגיעה ואומרת, אתה יודע...
Now let's switch traditions. Let's go to the Muslim tradition. But before that, I wanted to continue talking about... because I had an exorcism that was performed in the Catholic tradition, and of course they used the traditional Roman rite. Then that was in the 90s when I had performed the magic of Abramelin and the Mage, and unfortunately this led me to being possessed, because when you do the magic of Abramelin and the Mage, you are supposed to dominate a bunch of demons, but they can become very dangerous. Then I had another exorcism. This other exorcism was in Konya, in Turkey, and this is the exorcist. Actually made a photo of him before when he started to perform the exorcist on me.
Is that your exorcist?
This was the exorcist.
I thought it was a woman.
No, that was in Egypt. That was Madame Fula. That was in 2003, while this is in Turkey, another exorcism, which instead was performed on me. The year was, I think, if I don't get it wrong, it was 2006. And so, or 7. And I was in Turkey, in the city of Konya, where you have, of course, buried Jalaluddin Rumi. This was the exorcist. And he performed, of course, a Islamic ritual with me. Let's go and check an Islamic ritual. This is an Islamic ritual which basically was done on the young guy who became a member of a group thinking he could obtain immense powers from this gene. It's disturbing, of course, but I'm sure that you can take it. Here we go. Christy, can you take it?
I can take it.
Okay then.
Okay, the second case, the 17-year-old boy. Actually, he the one who find fault lah. He the one who go to his friend, invite him to join a session where they learn how to be invincible. He admitted that he tried to stand, and then a few people tried to go and attack him, try to beat him, but they will start to bounce back. Nothing happened. You know, he thought he got this sort of magical aura thing that people cannot whack him. But unfortunately, no, there's the jinn helping him.
Jin tu lawan datang, dia tolak, dia pukul. Tapi kalau betul-betul waktu anda pergi pegang, mati kau. Dikata.
Then why?
Now, before we continue, let's also define the difference between a mentally ill person and a possessed person. A possessed person might be able to talk in languages he never knew. He might be able to have the power of telepathy. He might be able also to do other incredible things. There will be things moving around, phenomena that, of course, can also be called poltergeist. that is what defines really a possessed individual. The fact that he is very much coherent about his assertion. He's not just spinning out of his mouth a word salad. Now let's continue with this Islamic exorcism.
They came here is because the father see that ever since his son joined this type of thing, he became very temperamental, bad temper, very rude, okay, do not want to go to the mosque, you know, he do not want to pray, become a very disobedient child. He's just 17 years old and the mother say he's not like this. So when the jinn enters the person's body, it not only disturb you, but it only corrupted your mind. I really don't feel good. It's getting a lot.
Is anyone here? What did you find? You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.
Makhluk yang berada dalam tubuh laki ini, seruan pada semua makhluk yang berada di luar tubuhnya, seruan pada semua makhluk yang berada di rumahnya maupun kamu. Asal kau tak keluar lagi dari tubuh dia. Kamu nak sakit kau? Mu'minun kullun amana billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusuli la nufarriqu baina ahadin min rusuli wa qalu sami'na wa ata'na ghufranaka rabbana wa ilaikal masir la yukallifu nafsan illa wus'aha laha ma kasabat wa 'alayha ma kasabat ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
So here we are. I think this is the first time where we can go and see the differences in real time between an Islamic exorcism, a Catholic exorcism.
Todos eles são utilizados em vento. Ergo nu, ergo India,
And of course, we saw what went on with the Jewish exorcism. So, Christy, what do you think of what we have shown up until now? I mean, different traditions, really same enemy.
I was really happy to see the guy
the Jewish
after, and his father was so happy, and he looks so like released, you know, like just like peaceful.
Yes.
And I wanted to say one thing.
Yes.
Like, when I was in Italy, probably if you read my book, you know, I talked a lot about the different things I was doing in Italy, and it was just some occult stuff. Like I was studying the occult, and I was using crystals. I never did any magic, but it was just I was studying crystals, and just the fact that I was interested in these things, and I brought some crystals into my house. Oh, I was also doing a lot of green Tara mantras, you know. And so, you know, I would do these green Tara mantras, and I would do, it was very like, I guess it was new agey. I don't know what it was. I don't know what I was doing. Yet, you know, I started to do these things that I'd never done before. And I started to see things in my life that I'd never seen before. And I didn't really like what I was seeing. And I didn't like the people that were coming into my life. And it was all very negative for me. And so I left Italy, and I left a lot of that behind when I left my things behind. So I left a lot of my crystals, almost all of them in Italy. And I came to the US, and I don't know, it was just, even though I had gotten rid of all those things, I just still felt like weighed down by these things, you know, that I had opened myself up to. And so that's why I had this exorcism, and it was mostly because of that. And I also want to say that I think it was like one of my birthdays, and we were in Italy, and we went and visited Giancarlo Seri. And who is he? He's the
Grand Hierophant of the Memphis and Misdream, Grand Master of the Memphis and Misdream for the Grand Orient of Italy, and for all the sovereign sanctuary of the Memphis and Misdream in the world. So yeah, very knowledgeable individual. That's for sure.
So he was interviewing him for something different, and he's like, "Oh, hi, Christy, how are you? You look well. Happy birthday." And then he looked at me, and he had these strange kind of eyes that were really blue, you know. And he looked at me, and he was looking behind me. And he asked me, like, if I had been studying things. And I said, yeah, I was studying. I was reading 40 books on the occult. And he said, you need to stop. He said, he didn't tell me what he saw, but I could see in his eyes that he saw something, like, around me, you know. I don't want that stuff around me. I'm a good person. So I'm so glad that I got rid of that stuff. So.
Absolutely. And watch here. This is 4 years ago. The Mail Online published this. I mean, literally looks like an horror movie. It's in reality a maid that's been filmed possessed. And of course, this is a scene that really resembles some kind of horror movie, but in reality, this is a real filmed with a camera, an internal camera to the home.
Well, I'm sure she doesn't feel very good.
No.
And I'm sure she just hasn't eaten, and she's probably been in her bed and not well at all. She needs help.
It's pretty scary to see this kind of things happening. Let's go back to what Father Malachi Martin said about exorcism.
And used for nefarious ends.
Doctor, is the devil a fallen angel? Is that correct?
That's the idea. They are all fallen angels. The idea is that once upon a time, 1/3 of the angels of God revolted against him and were condemned to hell and became demons.
What was the purpose of that rebellion, Doctor?
The purpose of the rebellion was simply the ambition of one spirit, Lucifer, the son of the dawn. That's what his name means, the light bearer or the son of the dawn, who said, I will not serve. I will be equal to God.
And so that's what they're trying to do today. When we see the Grammy Awards with the friars, the flaming hell that they are showing openly. And of course, I invite people to read volume 8 of my Confessions, because it really brings you close to what is happening in the show business, in the world of cinema, of music, where they are openly now parading as devil's little helpers. And in my book, I explain here how you can really understand the difference between mental illness and really how can you, and possession, because it's very important to realize the difference. Attraction also and to something occult. At times, weak minds through the occult, unfortunately, end up having problems. So that's,
yes, I had a weak mind.
Well, I mean, you probably were not expecting.
I was a sponge.
You were a sponge at that time. Now, the first thing is aversion to religion, like I said. You can basically, the first thing when you notice the aversion to religion. So that's why I'm saying, when you have a mentally ill person and he instead, approaches the priest, likes the Bible, reads with him phrases, he's not a possessed individual.
Okay.
Possessed individual will immediately, hate. There's a hate for priests, a hate for the scriptures, and a hate for the sign of the cross which of course also is a very powerful sign. And when I was exorcised by Madame Fula in that particular way, which of course it's known as I didn't find online any exorcism done with that kind of tradition. I found only some divination that done with that kind of tradition. But I want to show you, because with the lead, she captured the demons, and I saw them after. The demons actually materialize. The lead and contact with the water becomes a piece of metal, and you could see the horns.
Ooh, I'm glad I didn't know you then. You're probably awful.
Well, I was simply, why was I possessed? Because a black magician, Nikolai Friswold, had thrown a curse on me. This is also how you can get possessed. You can get possessed also with curses that are thrown on you. Not only because you are inviting them, maybe because through alcohol, drugs, or other things. But this is basically...
the ancient art of molybdomancy.
Molybdomancy, that can, though, also be used for exorcism.
Fortune telling with lead in water. Fill a bowl half full with water, cold water. Take some metal in your hand and shake well to imbue it with your energy. Once that's done, place it into your ladle. You can use any hot plate to heat this ladle in a few minutes. It will start melting. Once it has become completely liquid, grasp the ladle firmly with both hands and pour swiftly into the water. Let cool.
Now, that moment of pouring into the water, when I was doing the exorcism, that was done on my head. And basically I could feel on my head the noise of the lead, of course, that was being poured in the water. I'm going to show a little bit what happens during this exorcism, because we have some images here that people can see. We don't have a video, unfortunately, but we're showing, of course, the video of the divination. You see what happens? You put yourself under. Now, I must say, I didn't even have this cloth on top.
Whoa.
I had just the lead poured on top there of the water bowl. This is the lead. This is the water bowl. And this is basically a kind of exorcism that is highly effective, and it's also done, like I said, in the Yiddish Jewish culture. And it's a very, very powerful kind of exorcism if you want to really capture the demons. So let's continue
for a few minutes,
because you can pick out from what comes out, you know, what you had. You can also use it for divination.
The item that now should be an interesting shape. Use your imagination to decide what it might represent, and our charts will give you its meaning. This is only a bit of fun, so don't take it too seriously.
Well, you see, it's it's fun when you do it for divination, but not when you do it for exorcism. Then it's a different thing. Now, another way of seeing if people are really possessed: irrational speech versus rational speech. I'm here citing my own book here in New Testament. In the New Testament accounts involving demons, the demons spoke in a rational manner. Untreated people with schizophrenia will often speak in nonsense and jump rapidly between unrelated topics. That doesn't happen to people who are possessed. You understand? The fact that the demons spoke in a rational manner is a third distinction. They communicated in a rational manner. Then we have also ordinary learning versus supernatural knowledge. The fact that they can foresee the future. They can actually, demons in the New Testament will speak through people to convey knowledge that otherwise could not have been known to the possessed individuals, about their families, about other people. You know, suddenly you will have this person, like in The Exorcist.
I keep thinking about that.
Let's go back to the movie. When he knows about the priest, he knows about his mother, he knows
Yeah.
about his personal but he, you know, that is a girl that he's exorcising, but in reality he's exorcising a powerful demon that knows everything about, and that demon was, in that case of the film The Exorcist, Pazuzu. Now, of course, we always like people to follow us every week, but we also know that maybe some people miss an episode or two. Now, go back one episode and you can get another very interesting show, because we talked about demons. We talk about demons in various traditions, ancient cultures. And you go back, and every week, in the last few weeks, we have started this new series exploring the Illuminati Occult, which is a series which I hope is really helping people understanding further secrets about the Illuminati tradition, because the Illuminati tradition is a very vast tradition, and so it goes into the occult, into the paranormal, but also into
what do you think about what I was doing? Because you
cleansing.
No. I mean, like when I was studying all that occult stuff. What do you think about that?
I think that people can study things and not being affected, but unfortunately, at times, if you have maybe you're living a particular moment in your life, you're weak, you are not ready to counteract that stuff that is, I mean, you can hold this book of magic. I mean, I'm just making an example. I don't have a book of magic in reality. I have volume 6.66. But I can have a book of magic in my hands and not being affected by it, because I'm praying to God, I'm protecting myself, and I'm reading this stuff, and I'm viewing it as simply knowledge, without being involved in it, without really getting too, and instead, but that's difficult for people. You have to have a lot of preparation.
I don't think my life was stable enough. They were after you too much in Italy, and I was like, all my defenses were down when I was studying that stuff. So I think it's a lot easier for the darker energies to come in and attack you. So I think that's why.
Now, demonic activity, it's of course not ordinary schizophrenia. So things might happen around. I mean, when I was possessed and I was brought to an exorcism the first time, there was, you remember the entrance of my mother's house, that big ancient Greek vase that was found by my grandfather under the water. It's a vase that should be in a museum. Well, it literally exploded. It was put back together. What you see there was put back together. It literally exploded.
Really?
Yeah.
That thing is big too.
Yeah, and it literally exploded. And I didn't even go close to it. But the energy that I was manifesting was so powerful. The demon had caught me, and of course was being very heavy on me. And in fact, it wouldn't let him even breathe properly. And that's why I went through my first exorcism. So I think that people need to understand, though, that the exorcise can become the exorcist later on, because of course the experience will also make him acquainted with a lot of things. When I was called in the middle of the night in 2014, early 2014, because the monks of the local monastery couldn't come over to this hospital where there was this black guy from Africa, who was, of course, an animist who had been practicing African witchcraft, and who was literally moving above. You saw him. He was completely possessed.
I didn't see him doing that, but that guy was possessed, for sure.
I was possessed, and he started levitating at one point on top of the bed. Well, the doctors in the place were so scared, they said, please, Leo, can you intervene? Now, that is one of the most paradoxical moments in my life, because I was being locked up for political reason in this mental asylum, and they asked me to deliver an exorcism. I mean, guys, I wish there was a camera there, because, I mean, and I delivered this exorcism by using, of course, the Padre Pio, the piece of the bandage of Padre Pio that was given to me by, it was incredible because actually it was a statue of Padre Pio in front of the hospital, and this guy arrived, and he was a guy who is a relative, is the brother of his grandfather, was the personal doctor of Padre Pio, so he had all this Padre Pio stuff, and he had been with the Pope when the Pope declared Padre Pio first a beato, then later on he became a saint, of course. But it was a very paradoxical situation to be called to perform an exorcism when you in reality are the subject in theory of you're supposed to be a mental case, not a guy delivering an exorcism. But of course, I was locked up there for political reasons. They knew that far too well, and they needed an exorcism as soon as possible, and I delivered it. And it was a powerful one, and the guy was exorcised. So,
Did you say thank you?
poor guy. I mean, really, to see when the people are really possessed, it's not a nice scene, guys. It's absolutely not a nice scene. I mean, I have many scenes here of people suffering from demonic possessions that I can show you, and I can tell you it's not very nice. So let's maybe view some of them, but in the meantime, we can continue talking about what we are talking, which is basically the distinction between being possessed and being mentally ill. So why don't you read this?
Normal versus occult phenomenon. There is an aspect to demon activity that is just plain spooky. If there are occurrences of poltergeists, levitations, trances, telepathy, and these cannot be ruled out as being optical illusions or fraudulent displays, then one is not dealing with ordinary schizophrenia. These most dramatic aspects that were frequently encountered helped stump Isaac's panel of psychodiagnosticians at Berkeley. He lists the following as indications of possession as opposed to mental illness: some form of paranormal phenomenon, such as poltergeist-type phenomenon, telepathy, levitation or strength out of proportion to age. There is an impact on others, paranormal phenomenon, stench, coldness, or the feeling of an alien presence, or that the patient has lost a human quality is experienced by someone other than the patient.
And of course, the chain how you become possessed. I mean, you become possessed because in some way you open yourself. Most of the time, it's not because you are cursed by some witch doctor or powerful man, but you can also be cursed, and that can lead eventually to a possession if the person cursing you is powerful enough and has probably sacrificed an animal or even a human being. So if prayers resolves the problem, then it was probably not schizophrenia. Let's be very clear. If medicine helps alleviate the problem, it was not demon possession. You can learn more about this with volume 6.66 of my Confessions. You can also purchase all my other books if you want to support this show. And I want to also invite people to sponsor our next show, which will be next week. We are continuing this series, which I think people are enjoying, because we are really bringing you deep into the occult, Illuminati, into the secrets even possession is a secret because, for example, people don't know that in the Jewish tradition there is a kind of possession that is regarded as a positive possession. This possession is known as the Ibur. Now, what is the Ibur? We said that the book are maybe at times some dead people, the soul of dead people. But what is the Ibur? The Ibur is basically the transmigration of the soul of somebody who is actually trying to help you or complete his own work on earth in some way. So Ibur is always good or positive, while the book is negative. And Ibur is the most positive form of possession and the most complicated. It happens when a righteous soul decides to occupy a living person body for a time and joins or spiritually impregnates the existing soul. Ibur is always temporary, and the living person may or may not know that is taking place. Often the living person has graciously given consent for the Ibur to enter his body. The reason for Ibur is always benevolent, and the departed soul wishes to complete an important task. Like I said, time to perform a mitzvah, a religious duty that can only be accomplished in the flesh, or maybe something that they need for their spiritual life, or maybe for the help of their own family. While instead, then you have, of course, what you're visioning now. These are cases of demonic possession. These are what in the Jewish tradition instead are the book, or even worse, the Shedim. The Shedim are basically spirits or demons, like I said, present in the Tanakh, and they are evil spirits that, of course, are demons, are simply demons. They appear only twice in the Tanakh, in Psalm 106, 37, and Deuteronomy 32, 17. And in both times, the text deals with child sacrifice or animal sacrifice. So that's also something that, of course, this is very disturbing. I mean, when you see these people really possessed, is no joke, guys. There is, of course, always the temptation to take these things lightly. And I want to show now a guy who goes to assist to the exorcism of a jinn. So in the Jewish, not in the Islamic, tradition, but his attitude is obviously very light, and he himself is going to be a little bit shocked. No? So, a bit shocked, because when you are taking things too lightly, then maybe bad things can happen. Or you can suddenly have a realization that maybe you've been superficial all along. So I think that it's important that today I also give you this other kind of testimony, because I think that it's very important for us. But before that, I would also like to show you something else that, of course, is to do instead with the fact that exorcisms are increasing and cases are getting darker. This is a report for only a couple of years ago,
For most people, tales.
Oh, sorry, guys, because. Okay, we continue with that, but we have so many things here on this desk.
Up at night. But for some, exorcisms are a desperate cry for help, to purge something having a very real effect on their lives. Our Emily Burris talked with an Oregon man who's performed hundreds of exorcisms, and she set in on one herself.
You've seen blood-chilling exorcisms portrayed in movies and hair-raising TV battles of good and evil. Even without the movie magic, a real-life exorcism can feel just as intense.
Command the impure and evil and impure spirits and demons to depart.
For Archbishop James Cloud, it's been his battle for nearly his whole life.
So this guy, you see, is a very serious guy who has an approach which is very serious. And of course, the people The picture froze. Unfortunately, guys, that can happen. But we are back. Me and Christy wanted to also, of course, show you on the screen one of the ways you can help us. What's that? I was watching both on my laptop and my phone. Well, yeah, it all froze. Now we will. That's it. So the Leo Zagami Show GoFundMe. You can also use PayPal with the GoFundMe. Otherwise, we have Fundly or we have Cash App. Yes, we are back. We are back, and we are able to bring you this this interesting event that happened when this investigator, this investigative journalist, with a very light approach, went to a Muslim exorcism.
You've lost it. No, still there. Well done. You look at it.
First of all, let's see the approach of this guy. Watch him.
So we're meeting Yasin. He's an exorcist, and he's going to be exorcising a jinn. From what I understand, it's a demon that predates Adam and Eve, apparently. They lived in this sort of pre-biblical era. This might be him now. Hang on, sorry guys. According to one study, half of Muslims in the UK believe in jinns and that they can only be exorcised through a process called ruqya. I want to witness an Islamic exorcism firsthand to better understand the relevance of these ancient rituals to modern day Islam. First, just explain to me what is an Islamic exorcism as opposed to a Catholic exorcism, if that makes sense.
That much difference, actually.
Okay.
Like the Catholics will recite their prayer, we recite our prayer, and the prayers are actually very similar. Okay. And you'll see probably abnormal reactions within the person.
And so what would indicate that something is a jinn and not sort of a mental health problem?
So that's the whole thing. Is it a jinn? Okay, for us, even that is questionable. We've seen so many videos of these ruqya people just utterly talking nonsense. Right, we can show you some videos, and it's totally superstitious.
Okay.
And Islam kind of like came to remove superstitious beliefs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, do you believe in jinns? Do you believe in...
We believe in jinns.
Okay.
Okay, but do they actually necessarily possess people? Okay. That's another question.
Okay. Yasin explained that many Islamic exorcists in the UK convince clients into believing they're inhabited by jinns to charge huge sums of money for their services. He explained that these entities are better viewed more neutrally as harmful personalities that cause spiritual ailments like depression or suicidal thought, and that reciting specific parts of the Quran or Bible can expel them. While his slightly more rational take on exorcism appealed to my scientific sensibilities, I was still a bit confused as to why he'd invited me here to document this. If a demon wasn't going to appear, what was I here to film?
So I'm going to actually get you involved.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to just lie down? And just watch this. Okay, just relax. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. You're better off typing him. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أعوذ بكلمات الله تامة من شر ما خلق مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Should we press there now? Go. There you go. Okay. So keep pressing.
What am I looking for?
And that's it. That's what you're looking for. You found it. Look. See, he's holding my hand. He's really in pain. يحيطون بما خلقهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء ووسع كرسيه السماوات الله لا إله إلا هو الحي. There you go. He's back to normal. Yeah. So that's fairly intense.
Yeah.
So you located a personality.
Yeah.
I've shown you how to remove this personality.
I see. That's what you were looking for. I was a bit confused. So the personality was localized in the stomach.
Yeah, exactly. At the area of affliction. So anyone who has multiple personality disorder, inverted commas, we can more or less locate that personality and extract it in this manner.
What's interesting for me is your, this scientific, I wouldn't call it skeptical approach. So you're looking for some kind of rational foundation for what's going on. But there's definitely a superstitious element to what I'm seeing. I mean, it looks very much to me like you're pulling a demon out of this guy. Do you have an explanation? What is it for you? What is it? What's inside you?
I don't know. Okay. I wish there was an answer or there was something out there that would tell us what it is, but there is nothing.
Yeah.
Christy, what do you think?
I think that's really interesting. Because it's just that part where they express themselves when they leave the demon, and you actually like cough and you spit and stuff. Like you spit and you cough.
Now, guys, we are almost at the end of this show, but we continue with this interesting testimony.
And you're just happy in that not knowing, like this is the sense
we're
that
not happy. We're looking into it. We're looking into it. We want answers.
Yassin wants to take the superstition and faith element out of his exorcisms. He believes the words of the Bible and the Quran have innate universal power. He wanted to prove that anyone can locate these split personalities and expel them using prayer, even non-believers like me, because if that's the case, that would undermine all these other immoral Ruqya practitioners who charge exorbitant fees for their services. That's why he agreed to meet me. He wanted to see if I could perform Ruqya and also if I would respond to Ruqya.
Allahu la ilaha illahu wal hayyul qayyum. لا تأخذه السنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض. Cameraman, would you like to press your friend? Because I don't know your friend, but he seems out of it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله. He seems out of it, yeah? Yeah, he is.
As Yassin probed my upper chest with his incomprehensibly strong digits, I remember feeling a creeping numbness along my left side that spread across my torso and then down to my legs, to the point that it felt like I'd been injected with some bizarre epidural. It was pleasant and comfortable and nothing like the distress his other clients seemed to go through. While I remember being completely lucid and aware, there are moments of footage I have no memory of, like when I'm lying on the floor and he's tapping at my stomach.
Okay, right, I'm going to call it there. You tell me.
Wait.
Sit back.
I just felt kind of trouble speaking and lightheaded right now. But
okay, so I haven't concluded and I haven't pushed it.
Yeah.
But it's just proof of concept. These are just simple prayers that people had traditionally.
So, a brilliant testimony I found, because he goes there in very skeptic, but then after this he kind of changes his mind. Now, this is a very interesting book. I have to thank my friend Bruce for this book, Protection from Evil. This is a very interesting book, and I would like Christy to read this part here.
For how long?
Until this part.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. The danger in drugs, burning incense, and offerings. One of the great dangers facing anyone along the path of spiritual pursuit is the temptation to take shortcuts to accomplish his goals. In occult circles, those who desire to cling to the sides of evil wish to make every effort to contact and commune with the malevolent forces that inhabit our domain. In order to quicken their way, many often turn to the use of dangerous mind-altering chemicals to open their consciousness to more easily perceive the other worlds. Little do they know they comprehend the dangers in these activities. Aside from this, many will also turn to offering plates of food or the burning of incense to Shadim and earth spirits in what they think are benign offerings. However, these activities have their dangers. We must discuss them each in turn.
So it's very important also to avoid certain practices. Now it's very fashionable this day to take ayahuasca and to basically take shortcuts into the other world without really being prepared to do that. The same happened at the height of the LSD age, and that is now actually being picked up again because LSD is coming back into fashion, but also opening doors into the unknown without really having the keys, and opening the doors into the unknown without really being protected. This Protection from Evil is a very interesting book by Rabbi Ariel B. Zadok from the Kosher Torah School. I also would like to remind that these concepts have been also written in my book regarding also the dangers and how to avoid certain things. When it comes down to drugs are the most dangerous, and especially certain drugs. I'm not talking here about a joint of marijuana. I'm talking here about drugs that literally can make you possessed. Like people who, for example, meth heads are possessed. They're all possessed. All the people you see in the streets of California without a home, unfortunately, those hobos, those homeless people who are talking with themselves, those people are sadly possessed. They're not necessarily mentally ill. They're really possessed, and you can see it. You can see it in a lot of them. We should definitely pray for them. In another passage of this book, this ancient, it talks here about making contact with certain entities, and unfortunately, making contact with certain entities means opening up to certain entities, and so it warns you about all this. And there is many ways of becoming unfortunately possessed, and many ways of falling into the abyss. And I hope that today with our show in some way we gave you a warning, and we have shown you how many different cultures are all saying more or less the same thing here. And even the Pope apparently at one point performed an exorcism, but who is going to perform an exorcism on the Pope? That's my question here, because the Pope apparently also performed an exorcism, but I repeat, who is going to exorcise the Pope? Because he seems to be pretty much possessed. But here, in this video that I'm going to show you, the Pope is basically delivering somebody from evil. It's pretty clear that he's doing an exorcism. He after said that he wasn't, but it's pretty clear what the Pope was doing. And this is, of course, a report that was done a few years ago with that when this happened by CNN.
This is the image many people have of exorcism. Scenes like these from the 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. But exorcism is very much a reality. People wait outside this church all night in the Italian village Impruneta. People like filmmaker Lorenzo Raveggi. Someone put a curse on me and things started going very badly. I felt bad both physically and psychologically, he says. Then he shows me items he brought for blessing. Candles, water, and even clothes to keep evil spirits away. People who believe they're possessed come from all over Italy to see this man, Don Luigi Oropallo. The Pope is very open to exorcism, he says. Last year, some observers thought this video showed Pope Francis performing an exorcism. It created a buzz on social media sites. The Vatican strongly denied that the Pope was performing an exorcism. It said the Pope was conveying blessings. But some think Pope Francis is putting more emphasis on exorcism after the pontiff mentioned the devil in several early sermons, including Andrea Gemma, himself an exorcist priest. We believe in the existence of the devil, he says, and Pope Francis from the very beginning has said we must be wary of the devil, and the way to defend yourself against the devil is to go through the process of exorcism. Exorcism simply means ridding a person of demons or curses. Rituals include everything from prayers to blessing items to using special oils. But critics like priest Don Andrea Bigialli say many misunderstand the true meaning of fighting one's inner demons. There's a lot of superstition involved in all this, he says. The truth is that the liturgical formula does not allow any obscure rituals. But even though some rituals might seem obscure, people continue to flock to churches like this one in Impruneta, in the hope that priests might be able to rid them of the curses and demons they believe they have inside. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Impruneta, Italy.
Thank you for watching us today. It was an unusual show. Our computer went all over the place, froze for the first time. Things that out of this world happened. We had to exercise even the computer, and we would definitely do a prayer after this show, so we can cleanse ourselves from any possible evil. I want to thank, of course, the information I got from this book regarding the Jewish part, then also the book by Corrado Balducci, La Possessione Diabolica, and my own book that contains also a severe criticism on the revision that the Catholic Church did in 1999.
And then you also have you have the Latin, the exorcism prayer.
Yes,
in here.
exorcism prayer. Yes,
he has
yes.
the whole one in here.
Yes. No, it's in English. No, I didn't include the Latin, but it is definitely more easy for them to then realize the importance of the Latin prayer, because the Latin prayer is, of course, the one that you should be using, but you have to understand also what you are using and how you should use it. So that is definitely very important, yes, as well as discerning from mental illness and possession, so you can really exorcise those who really need it. No, so I think that we did a good service today. We hope that you all enjoy it. Foundry now is back to $15 as the minimum. It's been lowered again because we had to put it to 25 before, but now you can actually donate also with Foundry from $15.
I want to ask you something.
Yes.
Okay, so what if somebody isn't feeling very well and they think that maybe they're having a problem, they don't know what's wrong, but they want an exorcism? Do they actually have
first
to go?
First of all, are they religious people? Are they connected to a church, to a synagogue, to a mosque? It depends from all that. I mean, if they don't have any, if they don't have any religious denomination, well, first of all, they should have a baptism. Let's remember this: baptism, it's in itself an exorcism. That when it comes down to Christians, and also every single mass is in itself an exorcism. That's why the masses, especially in the Catholic tradition, were conducted in Latin before, and that's why the Pope is trying to destroy all this, and even the FBI is going after the traditional masses, because the FBI is satanic, just as Rihanna singing today in the middle of this performance that everybody is watching, the football, no? It's a distraction. It's panem et circenses, the Latins, the Romans used to say. We give them bread and circus, and the people are happy. Now, if you are Jewish, you, of course, can also follow the advice of your rabbi regarding the book, and I strongly suggest that also here in America, the Chabad tries to maybe take more seriously some cases of demonic possessions that are on the rise, especially during the pandemic, because that was something that happened during the pandemic. A lot of people were left alone in their homes with these computers, with their phones, with alcohol, with drugs, and the cases of demonic possession have been on the rise. Regarding Islam, of course, there is also people who practice exorcism. It's much more easy maybe to get an exorcist from your local mosque than it is actually from your local Catholic church, because there is some kind of bureaucracy that you have to go through to get an exorcist approved by the diocese and by your bishop. But I must say that now they are on the increase, because even the Catholic Church is recognizing the problem of demonic possession. And then we have, of course, other forms of religion, because this is maybe not known to many people, but even the animistic, the voodoo religion believes in demonic possession or spirit possession. We have Buddhism that believes in spirit possession. We have Hinduism. We have Wicca. We have Southeast Asian, African, and Native American traditions. They all try to cleanse these spirits.
I bet Satanists don't. I bet Satanists don't. Satanists.
Satanist, actually,
they don't need exorcism.
No, but
that's
not really the case. And then, in fact, it's a very good question. I talk about it in volume 6 of my Confessions. At times, even in the OTO, they practice exorcism, or in other satanic organizations, I have images of Satanists practicing.
They get too evil.
They get basically, because they are invoking these elemental spirits, they are doing all kind of witchcraft and stuff. At times they turn out to be possessed, and they recognize that. I have a photo that I published in volume 3 of my Confessions of Corrado Balducci with the head of the Satanist Ephraim Del Gatto performing an exorcism on a girl on the floor. And people will say, but what is the head of the exorcist doing with a demonologist, an exorcist from the Vatican?
That's weird.
Because, like I said, these people play with fire and they get burnt. So thank you very much, Christy, because that's really the how you say, the thing on the top on the cake. How you say that?
The icing on the cake.
Icing on the cake. Because
that's good.
I needed
the icing
to.
on the cake.
Okay.
I had it with this exorcism stuff now, so I want to watch some cartoons.
What is Rambo doing?
And he's asleep. I'm not waking him up.
So. Oh, okay.
Then I have to take him out. I want to take him out right now.
Okay. So, like Bruce is saying in the chat, don't play with fire if you don't want to get burnt. Don't. Try to always control yourself, even with alcohol, with any form of drugs, even light drugs like marijuana. If remember that you are gradually opening to something that can then come in, and you don't want it to come in. But I personally find marijuana doesn't give me any problems. But of course, you might maybe find a marijuana strain that is maybe genetically modified, super strong and whatever. And
I smoked some messed up shit
in London.
And when I almost died, it was synthetic. It's like some synthetic. Thanks a lot, Alistair.
Yeah, well, Alistair is my cousin. I know he's called Alistair. Yeah, I was like,
it wasn't Alistair Crowley.
No, but you remember at one point you said that maybe we should call an ambulance. I said,
no, and then you started laughing.
Yeah, because you can't call an ambulance for a joint.
I was so not well. Bye, everyone.
Share this video, put like, and become sponsors of our next broadcast.
Keep the light of God inside.
Now, we don't know if are we going to come back on Saturday or on Sunday next week. We don't know yet. We don't know.
Probably Sunday.
Padre Pio. Maybe the FBI is gonna put me on their watch list because I showed the Padre Pio's piece from the Stigmata. This is basically a piece of his bandages of Padre Pio, who used to exercise using Latin. Is the FBI gonna arrest us now? Ooh, we are scared. I think the FBI and Joe Biden should be scared of their souls. Or what? And from Palm Springs, California, that's all and a little bit more.